Good morning, and welcome to the 7th episode of the Fat Feminist Witch podcast. As always, I am your host, Paige. Though I guess I should say afternoon. By the time this gets to you, it'll be afternoon time. So good afternoon. As you can tell, it is a Tuesday. My podcasts were usually going up on Thursdays. Last one was a Monday. There's going to be a new format with the podcast. I'm going to be recording every other week instead of every week. And this is just to make sure that I don't get burnt out on my topics. I mean, I could come up with 10 topics, and if I'm doing it every week, I'm going to go through those pretty quickly. So I'm going to be going every other week. This will also leave me more time to write a more extensive blog post that goes with each instead of just a recap of what I've already talked about. And speaking of the blog, I have had to get myself a new blog website. So you can now find my website at thefatfeministwitch.wordpress.com. A little easier to remember than the old one. It's also the reason why this podcast is a little bit late coming. I had some issues with my other blog. Thank you, Mercury Retrograde. So thefatfeministwitch.wordpress.com. All of my old blog posts are already up on there. 2 new ones are up as well. And as usual, it'll still link to the podcast, to my Etsy store. There's also now a link to the Windsor Essex Fat Babe Squad that'll link you directly to the group. So if you are in Windsor, Essex, and you are a plus-size woman and you want to join up, it's mostly just for fun, although there is some activism and weekly discussion topics and stuff like that. So check us out. As I've said, I've got a new website now, and I put up 2 blog posts. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is something that I'm going to make as sort of a series here on the Fat Feminist Witch, which is Book Review of Shadows. I'm so clever. I read a lot of books. I set myself a goal every year to read a lot of books, which you can follow along on goodreads.com if you find me. That's cool. But I read a lot of books, and a lot of them are witchy based. So quite a few of them are fiction. I love fiction, but I also read nonfiction books for witchcraft. And this one that I've posted about is one I read specifically to talk about in my podcast today. So I figured it would be cool to do a little in-depth review of this particular book. The book is called It's Witchcraft, A Beginner's Guide to Secular and Non-Secular Witchcraft, written by someone named Jamie Weaver. I found this while I was actually searching tumblr.com. I typed secular witchcraft into the tags and looked around to see if I could find any blogs that deal with secular witchcraft, which is what we're going to talk about today, by the way. And I came across this book. Now, there aren't a lot of books talking about secular witchcraft, partly because it's new and partly because it's kind of a personal thing, which we'll get into later. But I found this one here. And I really, really liked it, and I think you guys should check it out. If you have a PayPal account, you can go on lulu.com and you can find it there. It cost me $6.40 Canadian, so it's not a lot of money. And I think it's a good one to buy in ebook form because it has kind of an appendix, like a reference section. So it'll be good to go back and reference very easily. And with an ebook, you can type in something into a search bar and find it really quickly. So I think this is a good one to have on your phone or your tablet or what have you. What I liked most about this book is that it is totally non-judgmental, but it still talks about ethics within witchcraft and not stealing from other people's closed cultures or religions and things like that. And I really liked it, but it's totally non-judgmental. She goes into depth about, what certain people believe and different types of witches or witchcraft or different types of beliefs, and then says, if you don't want to believe any of this stuff, that is totally up to you. This is just what's out there. I really liked that. It's also kind of a personal book. So I keep saying she, I'm just assuming. I'm sorry if it's not a she. If you're not a she, I'm very sorry. I just kind of assume everyone who's smart is a woman. So yeah, she goes into depth about her own practice and says, these are the things that I do. You don't have to do it this way. This is just a guide. Other things I liked about the book is that it's written very casually, so it's almost like you're talking to a friend while you're reading this book. She posts a quote from The Craft on there, and I was like, wow, this really applies to me. She talks about Harry Potter a little bit. She mentions that people might be a little bit critical of you when they tell them you're a witch, and the quote from the book says, along the path you may find that some people will think you're being silly or going through a phase. You may even get my personal favorite, like what, all that Harry Potter stuff? Yes, like all that Harry Potter stuff. Many of my fellow Potter fans will agree with me when I say, if only. this resonates with me as a Harry Potter fan, especially in the wake of Alan Rickman dying. It really hit home. It was really nice. She also says things like it's not good to keep opening doorways in energy, so make sure you pee before you get started. And for whatever reason, the fact that she actually said the word pee made me really excited. Like I said, it's written for everybody. Anybody can understand this book. Anybody can see where she's coming from. But it's still very well written. So when you get to the spells and the stuff, the rituals, the poetry is really, really nice. She gives you visualization exercises, meditation exercises. She lists out spells that she uses. It's really, really cool. So it's a good book for beginners. It says beginner's guide. But as a person who's been practicing witchcraft for a really long time, I still found things in there that I didn't know or that I needed a little more clarification for, and I really liked it. I learned things from this book. So in my book review of Shadows series, I'm going to be rating the books out of crystal balls, and I gave this book 4 out of 5 crystal balls. The only reason it got 4 out of 5 instead of 5 is because it's obviously a first book written by a new author. It needs a little bit of editing. I found affect and effect kind of mixed up. Some other spelling or like some extra words in there that didn't need to be there. The text just needs to be justified. It's aesthetic and spelling and grammar stuff, which doesn't distract from the content at all. There's no other crazy characters or anything all over the place. So 4 to 5 crystal balls, highly recommend. Like I said, it's $6.40 Canadian and you can buy it with PayPal and you can download it right to your phone or your computer or what have you. And it's not very long. I read it in the tub. So definitely check it out. It's Witchcraft by Jamie Weaver. And you can find the link to download it and the link to its Goodreads page on my blog at thefatfeministwitch.wordpress.com. So as I said, today we are going to be talking about secular witchcraft. Secular witchcraft is non-religious witchcraft. And this is something that people ask about kind of a lot. And the person who asked about it this time, her name is Shauna, and she sent me a message through my Facebook page. And I'm so excited that I got this awesome message through my Facebook page, so I'm going to read some of it to you. She says, I'm super interested in hearing about how you practice witchcraft while being secular. I consider myself a humanist, but I have always been very drawn to paganism and have studied a lot about modern witchcraft. I did some solitary practice when I was younger for a couple of years, but I found it hard to reconcile my atheism with it. I would love to hear more about how you do that in your own life and practice. I've never fully given up hope that I would find a way someday. She also said a lot of really nice things about the podcast and the blog that, made my cheeks get really warm. So thank you so much, Shauna. Also, wow. It's like you pulled those words straight out of my own head. I have had this exact experience. As I've mentioned before in the blog, I came to witchcraft by way of Wicca back in the 90s, which I will talk about more in depth another time. I love talking about 90s Wicca. It's my favorite. So I came to witchcraft by way of Wicca in the 90s, and part of the reason for that was because that's what was there. Wicca is still the easiest thing to find information about, but in the 90s it was really, that's just it. That was your option. So that's how I found it. I was excited about everything I read. Everything resonated with me. I was all about spells and stuff like that because I was a silly little kid and I thought that was cute. I was all about all the silly stuff I read, even the Silver Raven Wolf stuff. But the idea of gods and goddesses kind of didn't strike so hard of a chord. Luckily, I was not popular in the 90s. I really liked Greek mythology. I read every book in my school library on Greek mythology, these big, green, encyclopedia-style books. They were ridiculous. I had no friends. So I read a lot of Greek mythology, and I knew all of the Olympians, and then some of the more fringe gods and goddesses, and I was very interested in Greek mythology, so I just kind of went with that. I said, well, whatever, I've got this pantheon of gods that I know about and can use here, and I'm sure I can just believe in these. I mean, why not? That's not what happened. I can't believe in that. I can't believe that they're real. Not that I know for a fact that they're not, but I can't sit here and pretend that I'm talking to ancient goddess Artemis, asking for help or something. I just can't. It's just not in my nature. It's just not who I am. So it was this thing I always thought about, and I felt like a failure in a lot of my witchcraft because I just wasn't doing it right. Just wasn't doing it right. I always knew that something was missing, that I didn't feel this completely, and so I kept kind of putting off doing more. When I got to high school, I mean, being a teen witch in high school is not super easy. I eventually kind of stopped for a while. Every now and then I'd get back into it. I'd buy a new book, or I'd pick up a deck of cards, or something like that. I'd sew up a dream pillow. But I never really got all that back into it, because that gnawing feeling in the back of my mind saying, you don't really believe in this, was there. It was really upsetting. In my mid-20s, I found a group of people who studied together. It was mostly a study group. And once in a while, we would practice together. So Sabbats or full moons, stuff like that. They're called the Sacred Circle Pagans. Shout out to any of them that might be listening. They're such great people. I still talk to most of them. But the nice thing about SCP is that we all believed totally different things. And I remember the first time I showed up, they said, okay, who are you? Blah, blah, blah. And what is it you believe? And I remember being a little bit stumped by that question because I was like, oh shit, I have no idea. So, the two girls that ran it were Wiccan. Everyone else believed different things. One guy was super interesting. He was so cool. His tradition involved staying outside of our circle and acting as sort of a protector. He had a small kind of ceremonial weapon and like a really dope tattoo on his back of his situation. So we were all totally different. We all did different things. We all believed different things. And as we were studying, we all had different opinions on different topics. It was really, really cool. And when we did rituals together, they asked everybody if they wanted to take part. They gave everyone a part. The two girls who ran it, who were Wiccan, were they were theater geeks who were learning to be teachers. They're both teachers now and still theater geeks as far as I know. So they were handing out parts like it was a play. And I always said, I don't want a speaking part. And it's strictly because I'm not good at rhyming out loud. Rhyming out loud just doesn't feel genuine to me. It feels fake right away. So I said, no, non-speaking parts, but I would love to do whatever it is. I was usually the one that went around the circle and put down salt and flowers and stuff. I liked that. So they gave me a part that I felt comfortable with. Everybody said different things, stood in different points of the circle. They made it very simple for everyone to understand. Everyone could insert their own god or goddess that resonated with the energy that we were trying to build up at that time. And I'm not lying when I say that I really felt things in these circles. One was so crazy. We went outside and it hadn't been the clearest day in the world, but it wasn't raining or anything. We get outside and I had been super upset that day and I really project my emotions. So I think everyone can tell. So my energy was a little bit high. But we get into this circle and we're going along and we're doing our thing. And as we're doing our thing, the wind is picking up a little bit. It's getting a little scary outside. And then we're holding hands and we start going around in a circle. And as we go around in the circle, we move a little bit faster every time. And as we're going around in the circle, every time we go around, the wind is getting higher and higher and higher. And it was getting so windy in this backyard where we were doing this that the fire was starting to go out and then tree branches cracked and fell. And we're like, oh shit, maybe it's time for a ritual to be over. So we started cleaning everything up and we're moving really quickly, right? Because we could tell that a storm is coming. So we're gathering everything up and we get everything into the house and we shut the door. And the second we shut that door, whoosh, crazy rain comes down. And I mean big droplets the size of your fist type rain. That really amazing, cleansing, cooling, soft summer rain. But it was coming down by the bucket. And it was awesome. I'm not saying we affected the weather entirely, but I mean, come on. We totally did. We totally did. It was awesome. I like to believe we did. I think it's fun. One of my favorite stories of all time. So despite the fact that we all came from different places, we believed different things, we worshiped different gods, or none if you were me, we stood in different places, we said different things, we all connected together, and I really felt something. And as a skeptic and someone who had been working under the assumption for years that I didn't really believe and that I was faking belief, I really felt something, and I really believed now. But I still didn't believe that those gods were there. But I didn't need them. Because if I'm not worshiping the same gods as those people, and if they're all worshiping different gods, I mean, how did it work if we're all there, if we all believe different things? Maybe I don't need to believe in anything that I don't fucking want to. I can believe whatever it is I want, because magic is there no matter what. Magic's something you do. It's not necessarily something that comes from outside of you and that you have to believe in. You do it or you don't. And I did it. And I still do it. And I still feel it. Though not as strong as I did with them. Or even that time. That time's still craziest. But working with those people was just the best. I miss them. And we've all moved away. But so this let me know that it wasn't necessary for me to believe in these gods. And that I wasn't a failure in witchcraft. I wasn't faking any sort of belief or feeling. Those feelings and those beliefs were there. They just weren't there in the way that I thought they had to be. So it is totally possible to practice magic, to be a witch, and to not believe in those gods, because I do and I did. It's totally possible. The reason I was so shocked by this, even in my mid-20s, and why lots of people still struggle with this, is because most books on witchcraft, most authorities on witchcraft, approach it from a religious standpoint. A lot of them are Wiccan. Wiccan is still the biggest one. But even ones that don't say they're Wiccan, a lot of them are writing as Wiccans. Some authors I really, really like still use the words Wicca and witchcraft interchangeably as if they're the same things. But they're not. So I'm going to set the record straight with this one, and I'm going to explain these words. So I'm going to start with the word pagan, which I used earlier, Sacred Circle pagans. Pagan is a word that you see a lot within the magical community, pagan pride events, stuff like that. Pagan is an umbrella term. It encompasses any religion that is non-Abrahamic in origin. Abrahamic refers to Abraham. So Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are Abrahamic religions. They're the only Abrahamic religions. Anything else that is not those three is technically pagan. So Buddhism is pagan, Taoism, Hinduism, Voodoo, Santeria. These non-Abrahamic religious beliefs are all technically pagan. Though they don't always use the word pagan. In more casual settings, you'll hear the word pagan or even neo-pagan to describe these earth-based religions. Usually that involves some sort of energetic or magical practice. So, your Wiccans, your Druids, your Heathens, your witches, etc. If there's a religious connotation and it's kind of an earth-based, that would be pagan. Wicca is a religion. It is one set religion. Think of it kind of like a denomination, almost like what Catholicism is to Christianity. They believe in the same gods and stuff, but Catholics do things that other Christians just don't. It's also the biggest denomination of a pagan religion, I guess. It's the largest pagan faith in the world. It's the most popular. And someone I heard, I think it was on a podcast, described it as having more smells and bells. And that's totally it. Wicca is very ritualistic, kind of like Catholicism is, and there's a lot of stuff. So that's what Wicca is. There are different Wiccan belief systems, but they all kind of stem from the same place. And as we learned in my Wiccan history lesson podcast, Wicca is a modern invention. So ancient witchcraft is not Wicca. Even if Wicca was inspired by that, that's not what Wicca is. Wicca is a modern religion with a particular set of rules and ethics that you have to follow to be Wiccan. It often includes initiation, group practice, and dedication to particular deities. There's lots of solitary Wiccans that pull deities from all over the place. But if you are Wiccan, and you belong to a Wiccan group and tradition, you'll be initiated and you'll follow a particular pantheon of deities. So that's what Wicca is. Witchcraft, on the other hand, is a practice. Witchcraft is just the act of manipulating energy or the unseen to try and manipulate the physical world. It can be incorporated into your religious belief. It could be practiced outside of an opposing religious belief, or it can just be practiced on its own. You don't need to believe in any religion to practice witchcraft, though you can have a witchcraft or have a religion that incorporates witchcraft, or you can have a religion and practice witchcraft separately. And people think, well, I don't see how that works out. But, I mean, think about it. Things that we consider to be witchcraft now weren't always witchcraft. So herbalism and astronomy or astrology used to just be medicine. When I went to Salem, Massachusetts, I went into the home of Judge Corwin, who was one of the men who sentenced women to death for supposedly practicing witchcraft. We know that they weren't witches, but they apparently practiced witchcraft. In his home, when you're touring around, they set things up as they would have been back then, and they have little plaques and things that talk about regular life in Salem during the 1690s. And in the kitchen, there are herbs hanging from the ceiling and stuff hanging around the fireplace. There are dried herbs all over the place, and there are all these plaques talking about herbalism, making herbal medicine, using herbs for protection and for warding. And then there's a whole other section about astrology and astronomy and looking to the stars for answers on medicine. You get upstairs and you see the bedroom where the women gave birth with a midwife, and you see more herbs and things there. That stuff was part of regular life back then. Midwives helped everyone give birth, although midwives have always been tied closely with witches. Herbalism and astrology now are very witchy things. Think about practices like alchemy. Alchemy and magic potions, I mean, that's just chemistry now. That's regular science. So these things that we consider to be witchcraft now haven't always been witchcraft, and for a long time were totally non-religious. They were just what everyone did. Likewise, on the other side of the spectrum, meditation and yoga, these are thousands-year-old religious practices in the countries they come from, but here, people do them all the time just as exercise or as self-care, and there's usually no religious connotation. Most of the people in North America that practice yoga don't do it from a religious standpoint. Now, I have some individual feelings about yoga being like a white girl thing, but we'll get into that another time. Either way, things that are practiced within the Wiccan religion or any sort of pagan religion haven't always been religious, and things that are religious can be practiced secularly, which lets you know that witchcraft doesn't have to be practiced alongside a religion. So if that got a little bit confusing, all Wiccans are witches, but not all witches are Wiccan. All Wiccans are pagans, but not all pagans are Wiccan. Some witches are pagans, and some pagans practice witchcraft. I hope you're still there. So that is how those three terms kind of split off. Now, you can be all three of those things. You can also be only one of those things or two of those things. So you can mix those things together. And what you believe is really up to you. So I'm not saying you have to believe in deities or don't have to believe in deities, or that it's better to not, or that witchcraft is better if you don't, or that witchcraft is non-religious and you can't mix them together. No, you can do whatever you want. Before you start engaging in witchcraft, I would kind of sit down and figure out what it is you do believe. Do you believe in gods and goddesses? Do you believe that you are talking to somebody? Who are you talking to? Are you talking to angels or spirit guides, or are you talking to gods? Are you talking to nature or energy? Do you believe in mythical creatures and stories? I mean, if you believe in fairies, are gods really that big of a jump? If you don't believe in fairies and you do believe in gods, how do you rectify that? Stuff like that. That's something that only you can really figure out. And no matter what it is that you believe, if you still think that Wicca is cool, Wicca is an awesome place to start looking at witchcraft. It's where I started. It's where almost everyone starts. The thing about religion, especially within magical practice, is that religion serves as a really fantastic organization system for types of magic. So Wicca has really great basics, and it has rules, and it has ethics, and that is a particular type of magic. If you like herbalism and history and are a little bit more quiet and low-key, maybe look into druidry. And even if you feel like that is not a religious practice for you in the end, that's a really great place to learn a particular type of magic. So don't disregard any sort of religious learning just because you don't prescribe to their religion. Just be respectful no matter what. Knowing all that, I think it makes a little bit more sense now why I said at the beginning that a secular practice is really very personal, and it's hard to find books or guides. So not that I think I am the definitive guide here, but I've put together some tips for Shauna, for the rest of you, if you're interested in how I figure out the secular witchcraft thing. So after you figure out what it is you do and don't believe in, do that first. The advice that a lot of books will give you is to set up a space. An altar is a great way to get started. It's also I'm a very visual person. I'm also kind of tactile, so I like doing stuff like that. For Wiccans, there's always a nod to deities up on the altar, and the Wiccan altar setup is kind of the one that most people find. So not only will they put like a representation of a patron deity or something in the center of the altar, but they'll usually have a gold candle to represent the god and a silver candle to represent the goddess. I still like the idea of these opposing types of energy that work together and form a balance in the world. I really don't like the icky gender role stuff. I don't like that in general. I think it's it borders on offensive. And I don't think I live in a world, personally me, where there are only two genders. That's crazy. I know there's not. So, but I like the idea of those two types of energies. And the candles that are gold and silver are a great inspiration here. So instead of god and goddess, think of them in sun energy and then moon energy, or even hot and cool if you want to get really down to brass tacks here, because that's the type of energy that they are. So sun or hot energy is all about action and intent and passion. You're really doing things, you're getting your blood pumping. That's the kind of energy it is. The moon energy or the cool energy is low-key, it's intuitive, it's magical, it's mysterious, and it's more inside. Hot energy is kind of the outer world, cool energy is inner world. Those are still the same types of energy, and they're still the same descriptions for those god and goddess ideas, just with the religious factor taken out. So there are other times when you might be prompted to include an energy of a specific deity or even just a general god and goddess type situation. So if you do a little bit research and you figure out a little bit about that specific deity or about the type of energy you're trying to incorporate, you can just kind of come up with other ways to represent it. A super easy example is Venus or Aphrodite. Everybody knows who Venus or Aphrodite is. She's the goddess of love and sensuality, and a lot of spells and rituals about love or even self-love or women will bring up Venus and Aphrodite. So if you want, you can do a little bit of research on what she's about and what people do believe about Venus and Aphrodite, and just think of that as a classification system for energy. Think of it as just a representation of energy. Now, if you want to take her, the actual person, out, you can use symbols or images that represent those feelings. So love and sex, it's easy. If you need to carve a candle of Venus or her name into a candle, carve hearts. Use herbs or incense that symbolize love, like cinnamon. It's really easy to incorporate the energy associated with Venus and Aphrodite and love without actually using her as your symbol. Almost all witchcraft uses the elements. The elements are non-religious at all and can stand in for gods or goddesses or types of energy. So when you're calling the quarters or casting a circle or something, a lot of times you'll mention the elements. Take out everything except the elements. One of my favorite things about working with elemental magic is that the elements are different all over the world. So if you don't really dig the Western earth, air, fire, water, and spirit situation, you can look around the rest of the world and find elemental lists that work a little bit better for you. So in Chinese practices like feng shui, you get the elements of earth, wood, water, fire, and metal, which is super cool. Little bit more interesting, and for those who live in a city, I think those elements work a little bit better. So you have metal and you have wood all over the place because you're surrounded by buildings. So look into those elements. Start using those in place of gods or something they represent type of energy. So if you're not like me and you don't feel like there's energy out there, but the energy is more inside you, when you want to make your altar or your spells or anything, basically what you're going to do is you're going to put pictures of you on there. You're going to put pictures of you, things that represent you. Other people, you will hear them describe something as a vision board. And the word just makes my skin crawl a little bit. It's like one of those like new agey Oprah words. But that's essentially what you want to do, is you want to create a visual representation of who you are, who you want to be, and what your power that is inside you is. Rather than talking to gods and goddesses and someone that's out there, maybe you're talking to personal spirit guides that are in there, or your own subconscious, your inner truth, different parts of yourself that work harmoniously. I mean, whatever. The best thing about that sort of belief, where it's centered in you, is that your practice is totally personal. No one can tell you you are doing it wrong, because you're just not. It's all about you. In that case, you might want to look into things like crafting your own rituals and spells. If you want your own symbols and sigils, look into making those. That is a really cool way of incorporating your personal power and magic into what you do. There's this amazing stereotype out there that tells you that you can't believe in science and magic at the same time. People who believe in magic are all silly fairy people, and people who believe in science are very grounded, rational people. This is so not all there is. I am simultaneously a silly, magical person and a very grounded, rational person, very realistic person. And I cannot ignore science in the face of magic. I can't just pick one of those things. I have to believe in both. I so strongly believe that someone once said the very simple sentence of, "I don't believe in science," and I swear to God, it changed everything I knew about that person. I lost like 99% of the respect I had, and I can't deal with that. So, what you can do is believe in science and magic at the same time. I promise. Not only is there a lot of science proving that there's a connection between things, that energy is there, unseen energy of the planet, things like that. There are scientific explanations for a lot of the magic that I do personally, and I often have these explanations on hand when people ask me questions. So people will ask me, do you believe your tarot cards are like a mystical oracle, or that you're talking to gods or spirits? Not so much. I'm a really visual person. I also have a very strong intuition that is hard for me to pay attention to. It's rough. So I'm a very visual person, and when I'm using these tarot cards, what it really feels like is that I'm organizing my thoughts and feelings in a way that I can see with my own eyeballs. So my subconscious mind and my intuition are finding a way to get me that message that I am otherwise having a hard time listening to. That's coming from inside. So that's what my tarot cards are doing. Pendulums are kind of the same thing. A lot of people believe that pendulums are, again, channeling messages from outside of you. Another theory about pendulums is that you ask a question, you think about this question, and you're thinking about it with your brain, as you do, but you're thinking about it with your brain, and your subconscious mind is in your brain. It's there. And as you think about something, your subconscious mind it knows the answer, and it triggers these tiny micro-muscular movements in your hands that will make your pendulum move in the way it needs to go without you being able to see it. I mean, you're not swinging your arm. It's a tiny little flick of movement in your fingertips. So that is another, a little more of a scientific way to explain your pendulum. I used to work at a metaphysical store, and we sold a lot of stones and crystals, or as I called them, magic rocks. So people would ask me how magic rock works all the time. There are some people that believe that magic rocks all have a unique energy, and energy comes from the stone and enacts change in the real world. That's possible. It's also possible that stones are, again, a sort of cataloging system for types of energy. They represent types of energy, different types of things. So when you're carrying a stone or meditating on a stone, it keeps you focused on that kind of energy. If you set a goal for yourself and incorporate a stone with that goal or with that spell or what have you, and you hold on to that stone, you're going to have a little reminder all day to focus on that. So for example, amethyst is something that's supposed to help people calm down. If you have an amethyst with you all day and you get really angry and you have this tiny little amethyst palm stone and you're just rubbing it in your hand, it's almost like a stress ball. You're going to think about that amethyst and you're going to be like, oh right, this is going to help me calm down. And you're going to rub it, you're going to calm down, and you're going to remember to breathe. You also can't deny the magic of the placebo effect. So maybe it's fake, maybe it's real, maybe there's energy coming off that stone. Or maybe the energy is already in your brain and you just need a little bit of a reminder about it. Either way, it works, as long as it works, right? One type of magic that a lot of people can't wrap their head around without the idea of a deity is protection. So if you are asking for protection, but you don't believe in gods, who's protecting you? Who are you talking to? That is an awesome question. And the answer is, it's really up to you. The shorter answer is that you're not talking to fucking anybody. If you don't believe in gods, you're not talking to anyone. But that doesn't mean that protection magic can't be done in a secular way. You don't have to believe in this big comfy mama bear that's going to wrap you up in a hug and keep you safe. You can keep yourself safe. So, there are things like herbs or stones or what have you that work with protection. So you get yourself a black tourmaline and you put them in your windows, and that's supposed to keep things from getting in. I make protection pennies with salt and put those in my door frames and my windowsills, and those help protect you. Black salt, red brick dust, stuff like that. There are things you can use, and if you want something for yourself, you can still carry stones and stuff. Or my favorite is using protection magic coming from your aura, your auric field. Now, the science of the auric field is very complex, and you can just research it to death and still never know what you're talking about. And you might also not be able to see auras, so the aura is something that you have to figure out if you like. But I find it a really effective way to make yourself feel strong and feel protected. So you can absolutely just visualize a protective field around you, a color or a bubble. Think of Glinda from The Wizard of Oz, and I'm not even joking. Tess Whitehurst, who I of course love, has a book called Holistic Energy Magic. It's one of her newer books, and in it she talks about visualization and about different types of protection bubbles that you can visualize around yourself. And I absolutely loved it. It changed the way I visualize. I never thought I was good at visualization, but it turns out I'm not the worst. So what you can do is you can imagine this bubble of protection around you. One activity that she had was imagining that bubble is made of mirrors. So anyone who tries to project any sort of negativity on you gets that reflected right back at them. I love that. And that is something that really ties in with things like meditation, which, again, you can do totally secularly. So check out Holistic Energy Magic if you like, or if you sign up for her mailing list through her website. I think she just sent something out about visualization. So you can visualize, you can put things around your home. I mean, I like the idea of the stones. And if you're carrying that stone and someone gets shitty, you can hit them with it. I'm kidding. Don't hit anyone with a rock. But, so there are a lot of different ways that you can do magic without doing it in a religious way. You're just gonna have to sub out a few things. Sub out the gods and the goddesses for kind of energy that represents that kind of idea. Sub out things for the elements. Calling your quarters might be a little bit different. Casting a circle might be a little bit different. But it's worth it to try. If witchcraft feels right for you, ditching it because you feel like you're doing it wrong, trust me, wastes your time. It puts you in a bad place. It makes you question yourself. You know, if I thought this was right, but it's obviously not for me, what do I know? You don't want to get into stuff like that. It's not a good way to live. So, like I said, there's no definitive guide, and that was not a definitive guide, but I'm hoping that gives you a really good place to start. I'm still kind of figuring it out myself. I'm not a highly ritualistic person. So coming into contact with situations where I need to replace gods and goddesses just doesn't come up a lot anymore. So hopefully this will get you started in figuring out your secular witchcraft practice. If you have any questions that are more specific, you can absolutely send them to me in a Facebook message, just like Shauna did, because honestly, I loved it so much. So you can be a witch, you can practice witchcraft, you don't have to be Wiccan at all, and you don't have to feel like a failure for not believing in these gods and goddesses. So I found a few resources to help you guys out. If you want other secular witches to connect with and ask questions to, I found an awesome Facebook group it's just simply called Secular Witchcraft. The link to it is on my blog. And the people in this group are super, super nice. It's just a Facebook group. They post discussions, games, spells, photos, etc., etc., etc. I found it while I was researching for this and I joined. Super like the people in it. So check that out if you want other people. I found a couple of Tumblr blogs. Like I said, I use Tumblr a lot. So, Up the Witchy Punks is my fave. This awesome woman is like this rad anarchist punk rock feminist who writes a zine, and she lives, as far as I know, she lives in the Pacific Northwest, which is super punk rock. I say that because I used to live there. It's punk rock. And it's all about DIY witchcraft, making things yourself. She has a dope-ass garden. I really recommend checking her blog. She answers questions all the time, and she calls her particular secular type witchcraft agnostic witchcraft. Highly recommend her blog. It's great. Another two that I found are secularwitchcraft.tumblr.com and asksecularwitch.tumblr.com. Fairly self-explanatory. Really great blogs. If you have questions to ask, want to do some research, these two blogs are really, really good. Ask Secular Witch is really interesting. You can ask her questions about gods and goddesses, and she will give you really great answers. Another website I found, this is specifically for Shauna, but if anyone else considers themselves a humanist, and you already connect with that type of, for lack of a better term, belief system, and other humanist people, there's a website called humanisticpaganism.com. This is an awesome community with a really professional website, and it posts fantastic articles about how to rectify your belief in magic or ritual and your lack of belief in gods and goddesses. It's a really great resource for research and figuring out your own beliefs. And they talk about different things like naturalism, humanism, stuff like that. So check out humanisticpaganism.com. I really liked it. As I already mentioned, It's Witchcraft by Jamie Weaver. Really, really liked it. If you want to read my book review, you can. It's on the blog, and I posted a link to where you can get the book. If you are just ready to get to the magic already, check out Judika Isles' Element Encyclopedias. There are element encyclopedias for everything. I'm sure you've seen them at bookstores. Judika Isles has the Element Encyclopedia of 5,000 spells, which is this massive tome, or a more realistically sized Element Encyclopedia of 1,000 spells. And it's a soft cover. It's a little bit easier to carry around. There's spells in there that are outrageous, that you're never going to use, that are so old that they're not useful. There are spells full of herbs that I don't even know if they exist. But there are just as many spells that are completely useful, that you'll use all the time, and that you might even incorporate into your magic practice as a regular basis. Check out those books. The best thing about those books is that there's no judgment, there's no ethics, there's no religion or morality. It's just spells, how to conduct spells. So if you want to do hexing or cursing, there's sections in that. Love spells, sections in that. Regular spells, calling quarters, etc. It's all in there. Check it out. She also has the Element Encyclopedia of Witchcraft, which covers history, folklore associated with witchcraft, religious or otherwise. And if you really liked my Wiccan history lesson podcast, that's a good one to check out because it kind of sets some records straight. So that's what I have on secular witchcraft. Are you a secular witch? Do you have tips or guides that I didn't cover on here that you want to share with other people? I would love for you to share that with me and so I can pass it along. You can email me at thefatfeministwitch@gmail.com or send me a message through my Facebook page because I love that. You can also talk to me on Twitter at fatfeministwitch. On Twitter, it's there's an I missing out of feminist because Twitter has some character limits. So thank you so much for listening to my newest podcast. I know it was a little bit long. Thank you for sticking it out. And I really hope you have some good luck and get super witchy. Let me know all about it. Have a good week, everybody.